discuss classification of animals. And animals are classified into few groups according to the Whittaker. First group is the Monera and the second group is Protista. And what are the characteristic features of Monera and Protista? We just go through one by one. See that the first group Monera, these organisms are single cell organisms. Means all unicellular organisms are kept in the group Monera. The organism made up of single cell. Right, later no membrane bound nucleus. In these organisms there is no specific membrane around the nucleus, and in general it is called as no nucleus, and nucleus is absent. But in specifically there is no membrane bound nucleus. Nuclear material is present but there is no nuclear membrane. Later these organisms are reproduced by splitting. The parental organism can be splitted and produce the two daughter cells, generally called as the binary fission. So these organisms are reproduced by splitting method. It's a kind of asexual mode of reproduction. Later, these organisms, how they are getting the nutrients for their survival? These organisms absorb nutrients from outside their body. They cannot prepare food material by themselves. They are obtaining food material from other organisms, right? And these are locomotory organisms are there, because these organisms are not non-motile. These motile organisms, they can be moved from one place to another. So that these organisms are using some specific organs for locomotion. Those are flagella and cilia are the locomotory organs. And these are some are harmful and some are helpful or useful organisms. Some organisms are harmful to the animals and plants and humans also, and some organisms are helpful or useful. Example for these organisms are bacteria. For example, if you see the bacteria, lactobacillus bacteria is a useful bacteria for us. And some other bacteria which causing diseases in plants, animals and humans also. So that these organisms, some are harmful, some are useful. And coming to the second group, Protista. Protista organisms are actually evolved from Monera organisms. Monera organisms are the first group of organisms and Protista organisms are the second group of organisms. When you see the evolution of species, the Protista organisms are evolved from Monera organisms, so that some characters in Protista are resembled to that of the pre-existing group Monera. See the Protista organisms, some are unicellular and some are multicellular organisms. Right? Unicellular character is the Monerans character actually, because these organisms are evolved from Monera, so that these are unicellular. Some are modified, some are updated, so that those are multicellular organisms. Later, and these are membrane bound nucleus is present. Comparatively, Monera organisms, these organisms are having a specific nucleus, right? And here these organisms are, most of them they reproduce by splitting method, just as the Monera organisms. Monera organisms also reproduce by splitting, and Protista organisms also reproduce by splitting. See that these organisms are absorbing nutrients from other organisms because they cannot prepare food. And these are, some are autotrophic and some are heterotrophic. Some organisms are autotrophic, means they prepare food material by themselves, and some organisms are obtaining food material from other organisms. Later, like Monera organisms, Protista organisms also having the same kind of locomotory organs for locomotion from moving one place to another. Later, they live in the either solitary or colony. These organisms, some are living alone and some organisms are living as a group. We can consider that as a colony. Right? Examples of Protista organisms are algae, amoeba, paramecium are few examples of group Protista. When you see the algae, these are autotrophic organisms. and amoeba and paramecia obtaining food material from other organisms. These are the comparative study of Monera and Protista group. These are the two first groups of the animal kingdom according to Whittaker. In the classification of organisms, previously we discussed the Monera and Protista, later fungi and plantae. See the characters of fungi. Fungi is the most of the fungi organisms are multicelled. Means the organism made up of more than one cell, right? And some are one celled. Most of the organisms are many celled, and some organisms still they are unicellular organisms. Later, these are eukaryotes. Eukaryote in the sense of the organisms which having a prominent nucleus, or in other words, the organism which having a well bounded nucleus. That's nothing but, right? And these are heterotrophic nutrition. These organisms are obtaining food material from other organisms, and mostly fungi organisms are obtaining food material by decomposing the dead remains of plants and animals, right? So these are obtaining food material from debris of the dead remains, and this is called heterotrophic nutrition, right? Saprophytic, in other words. Later, and these organisms are reproduced by spores, right? And generally, how plants are reproduced by seeds is the one method. In the same way, the fungal organisms are reproduced by spores. Spores are equivalent to the seeds of the plant. Each spore can give rise to an individual organism of the fungi. Later, examples of this fungi are few are written here. One is yeast and mushrooms and mold, bread mold. Generally, we are seeing that the spoiled bread we are observing, right? Later, the another group is plantae. In the classification, the fourth group is plantae according to the Whittaker. The plantae is classified into two groups. Plantae in the sense of all the plants kept under the plantae group. This plantae has classified into two groups. One is cryptogams and another is phanerogams. Cryptogams and phanerogams. Cryptogams means these are non-flowering plants. Non-flowering plants. These plants doesn't possess any flowers. These are only for the ornamental or decorational purposes, right? And the cryptogams are classified into two types again. One is a bryophyta and another is pteridophyta. Bryophyta organisms doesn't have a specific like a false stem and false root system we are observing. Means those are also be looking like a root, looking like a stem, but it's not a real, it's a false root and false stem it seems. Later, the pteridophyta. Pteridophyta organisms are developed organisms like a plant itself. They have a true root system, true stem, true branches and leaves also having in the pteridophyta organisms. Later, the another group is phanerogams. Phanerogams in the sense of these plants are flowering plants. The plants which producing flowers comes under phanerogams. These phanerogams are again classified into two subgroups. One is gymnosperms, the another is angiosperms. Gymnosperms, angiosperms. Gymnosperms in the sense of the seeds which are not enclosed by fruit, and these seeds are exposed towards outside. The seeds are not covered by the fruit it seems. Later, angiosperms, the quite opposite to that of the gymnosperms. The seeds are located inside the fruit. These angiosperms are again divided into two or classified into two subgroups. One is a monocot and there is a dicot. Monocotyledons in the sense of the seed which containing a single portion. For example, rice and wheat are best examples of monocot, the seed which contain only one portion. Later, dicot. Dicot means the seed which containing the two equal parts is called dicot. All the pulses and cereals comes under the dicot. This is regarding the third group fungi and fourth group plantae.